The Council of Zephyria had seen many species rise and fall across the centuries, but none quite like the humans. When Captain Sarah Chen stepped into the crystalline chamber of the Galactic Defense Assembly, her modest toolkit slung across her shoulder, the assembled representatives barely suppressed their amusement. "This is what Earth sends us?" chittered Ambassador Vextar, his insectoid mandibles clicking in what passed for laughter among the Zerathi. "A single human with primitive implements?" The Void Swarm had already consumed 17 star systems in the outer rim. Their biomechanical ships moved like a plague across space, converting matter into more of themselves with ruthless efficiency. The greatest military minds of a dozen species had failed to find a solution. Plasma cannons, quantum torpedoes, reality-warping weapons, nothing had even slowed the swarm's advance. Sarah Chen said nothing as she approached the holographic display showing the swarm's progression. The other delegates continued their whispered mockery. The towering Gorvani representative, General Thex, gestured dismissively at her worn canvas toolbag. "The Terrans mock us," he rumbled, his voice like grinding stone. "While systems burn, they send us what is the human term? A maintenance worker." Sarah finally spoke, her voice quiet but carrying clearly through the chamber. "I'm an engineer." The distinction seemed lost on most of the assembly. She studied the tactical display, noting the swarm's movement patterns, their resource consumption rates, and the debris fields they left behind. While the other delegates debated evacuation protocols and defensive strategies, Sarah pulled out what appeared to be an ancient paper notebook and began sketching. "You take notes on processed plant matter?" asked Dr. Milani, the Centaurian science advisor, her tone incredulous. "Our quantum computers cannot solve this crisis, but you believe primitive mark-making will succeed?" Sarah looked up from her calculations. Sometimes the simplest tools are the most reliable ones. 3 days later, as the swarm approached the densely populated Kepler system, Sarah presented her plan. The assembled delegates listened with growing bewilderment as she outlined her strategy using terms they considered archaic. Leverage, fulcrums, tension, basic mechanical advantage. "You want to build a slingshot?" General Thex's confusion was evident even through his translator device. "A gravity slingshot," Sarah corrected, "using the system's binary stars as anchor points and the gas giant's gravitational field as our lever arm." The plan seemed impossibly crude to minds accustomed to sophisticated weaponry. Sarah's drawings showed cables, actual physical tethers stretching across astronomical distances. She spoke of pulleys and winches, of redirecting the swarm's own momentum against them. "This is madness," declared Ambassador Vextar. "You propose to fight an unstoppable force with rope and pulleys?" "Monofilament cables and gravitational manipulation," Sarah said patiently. "But yes, essentially rope and pulleys." With time running out and no alternative plans offering hope, the Council reluctantly approved Sarah's request for resources. They watched in bewilderment as human engineering ships arrived, not carrying weapons of mass destruction, but rather construction equipment that belonged in a planetary mining operation. The humans worked with methodical precision, anchoring massive cable networks to asteroids and moons. They used the gas giant's rings as a foundation, installing what appeared to be oversized versions of construction equipment Sarah carried in her toolkit, winches the size of space stations, pulleys that dwarfed battleships. As the swarm entered the system, their bioships immediately began consuming the outer planet's resources. But as they moved deeper into the system, seeking the populated worlds, they encountered Sarah's trap. The first swarm ship struck the nearly invisible monofilament cables and was immediately caught in a web spanning half the solar system. As more ships poured into the trap, the cables tightened using the swarm's own mass and momentum against them. The harder they pushed forward, the more entangled they became. But the true genius of Sarah's plan revealed itself as the cables, anchored to carefully calculated points around the binary stars, began to redirect the swarm's course. Like a massive slingshot spanning light years, the gravitational forces built up enormous tension. "Impossible," whispered Dr. Milani as she watched the tactical display. The entire swarm fleet, caught in Sarah's web, was being accelerated toward the system's binary pulsars, stellar remnants whose gravitational fields would tear apart anything that came too close. Sarah checked a mechanical wristwatch. Another primitive tool that had drawn mockery, and nodded. Release, she said quietly into her communicator. The humans triggered the release mechanisms, and millennia of accumulated stellar energy was unleashed in a single moment. The swarm fleet, accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed, was hurled directly into the pulsar system, where exotic matter and crushing gravity reduced their biomechanical ships to constituent atoms. In the stunned silence that followed, Ambassador Vextar's translator seemed to malfunction as he struggled to comprehend what they had witnessed. How, was all General Thex could manage. Sarah was already packing her tools back into the worn canvas bag. Archimedes said it best. Give me a lever long enough and a fulcrum on which to place it, and I shall move the world. She looked up at the assembled delegates. We just needed a bigger lever. As the human fleet prepared to depart, Dr. Milani approached Sarah one final time. Your species fights with tools our ancestors abandoned eons ago. How do you make such primitive methods so effective? Sarah smiled as she shouldered her toolkit. We never forgot that the universe runs on simple principles. Gravity, leverage, momentum. These things don't become obsolete just because you invent fancier weapons. Sometimes the old ways are the best ways. The Council of Zephyria never again underestimated the ingenuity of human engineering. And somewhere in the archives of a dozen civilizations, Sarah Chen's notebook sketches became the foundation for an entirely new field of mega-engineering. After all, if humans could move worlds with simple tools, what else might they accomplish?